In celebration of Halloween, I decided to preach on the most terrifying text in the Bible. Not really. If you know me, you know I just work my way through different texts and don't really pay much attention to any holidays. But it just so happens that we landed on what I consider to be one of the most terrifying texts in the Bible. That's usually the way things happen, I guess. But we're going to be studying Matthew 25 this morning. If you want to get out your Bibles and turn there with us. Thank you very much for being here today. Good to see you here. If we have visitors, we want you to know that you're especially welcome. We're going to be studying from Matthew 25 today and looking at this text. And I want to kind of make some comments at the beginning that I don't really like to fearmonger. It's not really my goal. I try not to do that. I know that the world does that a lot. I know the news does that like crazy. And they make a killing off of fear-mongering us. But maybe preachers try to do that sometimes. I don't want obedience to come out of fear only. I think it's appropriate to be afraid and to obey out of that. But ultimately, what we want is for everyone to choose to serve the Lord because they understand how good He is and how wonderful the blessings are that He has given to us. But there is certainly an aspect that we need to understand and be fully aware of, that there's a day that's coming that we should be terrified of the Lord on that day. Terrified of the judgment that is coming upon those who have lived a rebellious and disobedient life. I think really fear-mongering doesn't work. If the only reason why you're obeying God is because you're afraid of that day, Satan is going to convince you that it's not as bad as you think it is, and he's going to find a way to make you comfortable and make you forget about those fears. So I don't think fear-mongering is really the way. You need both. You need to have a desire to love the Lord, to study, to be obedient, to be faithful to the Lord. And you also need to have an appropriate level of fear and respect for Him. This morning, we're going to be studying in Matthew chapter 25. And this is a text where we see Jesus beginning to discuss, in my understanding of Matthew 24 and 25, the final judgment. Jesus, as we read this text, says, when the Son of Man comes in His glory, and all the angels with Him, then He will sit on His glorious throne. Before Him will be gathered all the nations, and He will separate people one from another, as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. As we look at this text, we see the very beginning, the Son of Man comes in His glory, and notice all the angels with Him. Now, that's a sign, letting us know angels are coming as well. You remember Elisha opens up the eyes of his servant to see that there's this huge army of angels, and he says, those who are for us are much more than those who are against us. And it's a picture here, Jesus coming with His angels is a picture of judgment. And notice what He says here, all the nations are being gathered in this text. Whenever it says, before Him will be gathered all the nations, you get the picture that the angels have gone out, they've done their work, and they've brought all the nations, not just Jerusalem, not just the Jewish people, but all the nations before Jesus. And notice verse 31 says, then He will sit on His glorious throne. There's a picture. Jesus is not going out with His angels to fight a battle against the world or something like that. But He goes out with His angels, and then the next scene, He's sitting on His throne, and the angels have done their work. They're gathering all the nations to Him and bringing them before Him as He sits on His throne. We're talking about the last day. Talking about the day when all the nations of earth are brought before Jesus in judgment. Jesus himself has referred to this back in Matthew 13, a very similar kind of a picture that he is going to be lifted up, he is going to be glorified, and he is going to judge all the nations. As you go forward, you notice he says he will separate the people one from another as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. And he will place the sheep on his right, but the goats on his left. A picture of Jesus being a shepherd is similar to a picture of a king throughout the Old Testament. In fact, if you go forward another verse, it says, then the king will say to those on his right. A picture of him sitting on his throne, a picture of him being the shepherd, being the king, and him separating out the peoples of all the nations of the earth, like a shepherd separates out the sheep and the goats. And in this picture, the goats are over here and the sheep are over here, but if Jesus is sitting before them, then the sheep are over here and the goats are over here. So I don't really know which one of y'all are supposed to be the sheep or the goats. I don't know who's right, who's left, or anything like that. But it doesn't matter. The point is, he knows his sheep. He can tell the difference between the two different species of people that there are, even though the people may look the same. He knows which ones are the sheep and which ones are the goats, and he makes this decision to separate them out from one another. And then we learn about the sheep. He says, verse 34, the king will say to those on his right, come, you who are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me. I was naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you visited me. I was in prison, and you came to me. Then the righteous will answer him, saying, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you drink? And when did we see you a stranger and welcome you, or naked and clothe you? And when did we see you sick or in prison and visit you? And the king will answer them, truly I say to you, as you did it to one of the least of these my brothers, you did it to me. Notice his words to the sheep. As he's gathered them together on his right side, he tells them, come, you blessed, inherit the kingdom. That's very interesting wording. You are the blessed. It reminds us of the Sermon on the Mount, right? Remember, blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are the meek. Blessed are those who mourn. Blessed are those who are hungering and thirsty for righteousness. Those who are persecuted for my name's sake. Those who are peacemakers. Blessed are you. Why are you blessed? Because yours is the kingdom of heaven. You will inherit the kingdom. And here we see on the judgment day him separating out those who fit the criteria that he has decided, being called blessed, being allowed to inherit the kingdom, being given the rule and the authority and the power that we talked about a couple weeks ago. But why is it that he says these are the ones who will be blessed and these are the ones who will be brought in? Well, he says a number of things, right? I was hungry and you gave me food. I was thirsty, you gave me drink. I was a stranger, you welcomed me. I was naked, you clothed me. I was sick, you visited me. I was in prison, you visited me. These sheep are sheep because they took action. They saw Jesus in need and they went and they helped Jesus in whatever the situation he was in, except what's interesting is they say, when did we see you? And when did we feed you? We don't ever remember seeing you, Jesus. I mean, so obviously this is referring to people who had not, at the time, cared for Jesus when he was in need. This is talking about something else. And Jesus says, he explains it to us. He says, as much as you did it to one of the least of these my brothers, you did it to me. You see that these people were compassionate people. They didn't help someone because they knew that was Jesus. And they knew that was going to be the king. And he's going to be the one given all power and authority over everything. And they didn't think, well, I better help him so that I'll get in his good graces and then he'll save me on the last day. That wasn't in their mind. That wasn't their focus. That wasn't their thought process. They had no idea that Jesus was watching as they helped out one of the least of these. Someone who is lowly, someone who is not able to repay for the good that was done to them. They helped out, and Jesus saw what they were doing. And Jesus cared about their love for other people. Remember, the second greatest commandment, it's interesting, that's what Jesus focuses in on. Whenever he talks to his sheep, he says, you loved your neighbor as yourself. You loved your neighbor as though it was me that was coming to you in need. So come on. You get to inherit the kingdom. Enter into the joy of your Lord, good and faithful servant, right? We read that in the last parable. So what a beautiful picture that is. What a wonderful blessing that would be to be among the sheep. But then he goes on and he says to those on his left, depart from me, you cursed, into the eternal fire prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was hungry, and you gave me no food. I was thirsty, and you gave me no drink. I was a stranger, and you did not welcome me. Naked, and you did not clothe me. Sick and in prison, and you did not visit me. And they will answer, saying, Lord, when did we see you hungry or thirsty or stranger or naked or sick or in prison and did not minister to you? And he will answer them, saying, truly I say to you, as you did not do it to one of the least of these, you did not do it to me. And these will go away into eternal punishment, but the righteous into eternal life. As I said, it's the most terrifying text in the Bible. These words of condemnation coming from Jesus to those on his left, saying, depart from me. You cursed. Notice the contrast. Instead of welcoming, it's get away. Instead of you're blessed, it's you're cursed. Instead of inheriting the kingdom, they're thrown into the same place as the devil and his angels. They're given eternal fire. Now, as we think about that, we are just like, wow, that's a harsh judgment against these people. What evil have they done to merit being joined to the devil and being thrown into the same punishment as the devil is thrown into? I mean, these have to be the worst of all of mankind. And yet Jesus says, I was hungry and you gave me no food. I was thirsty and you didn't give me anything to drink. I was naked and you didn't clothe me. I was sick and you didn't visit me. I was in prison and you didn't visit me. You didn't pay me any attention. You know, as these people are thinking about what they've done, probably wondering, Lord, when did I see you and refuse to give you what you needed? You know, certainly if they had seen Jesus, the future king, they would have given everything to him. They didn't withhold anything from Jesus. They would never have done that. But he says, as much as you didn't give it to one of the least of these, you didn't give it to me. What a contrast. In the picture of a people who were deceived into being stingy and selfish with their time and with their money. Jesus knows. Nobody else saw it whenever they were, just avoiding those in need. Nobody else saw it. I mean, obviously, how could you tell when somebody's avoiding doing a good thing? I mean, if they're nowhere near the location of the people in need and they're trying to avoid it, how could anybody see? How could anybody tell? How could anybody keep up with the list of good deeds and the compassion that's not being shown? But Jesus knew. He knew those who were selfish and stingy with their time and with their money. And he was keeping up with it. So what do we learn? This text tells us that judgment is real. Jesus himself is telling us that there is coming a day when he will judge all of mankind. And it's terrifying. It is a terrifying day. Jesus is going to make one decision. And that one decision is going to determine the fate of all mankind for all eternity. Does that not blow your mind? I mean, just one instance, at one time, he's going to do this. And maybe on one hand, we're kind of glad to hear this, right? I mean, hey, it's better to have Jesus making this judgment than anybody else. I mean, you look at Jesus' life, look at his love, look at his compassion, look at his patience and his long-suffering. Look at the type of person that he is, always giving and always loving everybody. And if we were to look at other people around us and we were to say, well, I'm sure glad that so-and-so isn't judging me on the last day. That's what I'd say. I've had people write me. I've had people talk to me and confront me and tell me I'm going to hell because of what I teach and what I said and where I stand. And they've given me all these things that I'm doing wrong and all of this. And I'm like, okay, give me a second. Let me write down these things I'm doing wrong. I want to get this right. But they're condemning. And people do that, and we all do that sometimes. We judge other people so harshly, and we don't even look at ourselves. We got a log in our eye, and we're picking out splinters. That's not Jesus. So on one hand, we should be very glad and very thankful that it's Jesus who's making the judgment, the one who is perfect, the one who understands our weaknesses and our trials and our temptations and our struggles in this world. He is the one who is going to judge our lives, not anybody else. Jesus. But this text tells us what we've already read and studied throughout Matthew. Jesus is not a fluffy teddy bear. He's not going to forgive everyone of their sins. It's available to anyone, but he won't forgive everyone. I mean, earlier, back in chapter 24, we saw him saying he's going to cut people in pieces. That is not a picture of a fluffy teddy bear. That is a picture of a mighty king, a mighty warrior coming in to destroy those who have rebelled and those who have done evil. You go back to chapter 7 of Matthew and verse 21, Jesus says, "Not everyone who says to me, 'Lord, Lord,' will enter the kingdom of heaven, but the one who does the will of my Father who is in heaven." And listen to this. He says, "On that day, many will say to me, 'Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name and cast out demons in your name and do many mighty works in your name?' Then I will declare to them, 'I never knew you.'" And here's those words again. "Depart from me, you workers of lawlessness." See, Jesus is coming to judge, and he's judging between two different groups of people. Now, isn't that fascinating? That there's only going to be two different groups of people in the judgment. And there's these people who are doing the will of God that are on his right, and there's this people who are not doing the will of God who are on his left. And that's it. There's not a third group. There's not a group of people who were kind of trying to do the will of God, but they were falling short a little bit in a few different ways. And so they're going to go into this purgatory area where they're going to be allowed to suffer for a little while as penance for the evil that they've done. And then they'll move into the right area. We don't get a picture of that at all. We get two groups. Either you are a sheep or you are a goat. And that is it. And if you looked like you were a sheep, but you were a goat, he knows. If you thought you were doing the will of God, but at the same time, you were living for this world and you didn't really know Jesus and you didn't really care to know him and you weren't really living for him, you weren't really fulfilling the command to love your neighbor as yourself, which is probably going to be the most evident that you don't really love and know Jesus, he knows. So that's what we learn from this text, and that's why this is the most terrifying text to me throughout all of the Bible, because it's one and done. One judgment, one king, making one decision, putting you into one of two groups, and you'll be there for all eternity. Friends, if that doesn't terrify you, I don't know what will. It terrifies me for myself. It terrifies me for you. It terrifies me for my friends and my family members who don't know the Lord, who aren't pursuing him. It's just a terrifying text. So what are we going to do with this text? Are we going to let this text impact us and affect us and change us? Are we going to obey the second greatest commandment, to love our neighbor as ourselves? Are we going to be sheep? Or are we just going to come to church and put on sheep's clothing? It's a decision we have to make. And God knows the difference between the two better than anybody else knows. I like to do an exercise because this is such an important text. If you're able, please stand. If you're not able, you can stay seated, no big deal. But if you're able, please stand up. I want you to close your eyes. I want you to imagine you're there on that day. Imagine being among the chosen. Imagine the relief that goes through your body, but also the fear that maybe it's not true. Does he know my deepest, darkest sin? Is he really going to accept me after all that I've done? Surely this is just temporary. Surely he's going to figure this out. Surely he's going to move me over to the other side. But no, this is eternal. For those who kept the faith and those who lived it out through selfless service, those who loved people who were not easy to love, they will be the most loved, and they'll be called blessed. They'll be given the kingdom. And that's us. And now we know we don't have to worry. All the pain, all the suffering, all the struggle, all of it's gone away. And we get to enter into the joy of the Lord for all eternity. All right, open your eyes. We need to do everything we can to feel that. Close your eyes again. This time, imagine that you're among the rejected. Imagine the dread. Imagine the intense fear and the coming to the reality of knowing that there are no more second chances for me. All the pleading that the preacher did, that my family did, that my friends did, was not enough for me to change my ways. I knew better. I had the appearance of righteousness, but deep down I knew I wasn't really loving God, and I wasn't really loving my neighbor as I should. I was selfishly living for what I could get from God and not for God. Jesus has just shown that he could see right through me. I was not pure in heart. I was selfish. I was proud. I loved this world more than I loved God, and he knew it. Open your eyes. There are plenty of people out there who are immoral and evil who will be in that group. But there are plenty of people who are churched people who do not love God and do not love their neighbor who will be in that group. We must always keep that in mind. And we must check our love for this world and be sure. that it's not overpowering the love we have for God. You can be seated. If those ideas don't terrify you, again, I don't know what will. That is a terrifying idea, that I am locked in to eternal damnation. And I hope that nobody gets that who's in this building right now. So what should we do in light of all of this? Is it that Jesus wants us to give more time and give more money? Is that what I'm asking? Is that what I'm telling you? You just need to do more. You need to do more. You need to do more. It's deeper than that. If that's our mentality, that we just have to do all these things, and I have to go to church, and I have to read my Bible, and I have to do all these things in order for God to forgive me on the last day, I have to do all of this. If that's our thought process, the devil's going to come in, and he's going to convince us to do a little less, and a little less, and a little less. He's going to make that line move a little bit more toward the world and a little bit further away from God. That's what he's going to do. He's done it 1,000,000 times, and he will do it again. So it doesn't work for me to sit up here and tell you, you have to do more. You have to spend more time serving God. You have to give more money. And if that's my attitude, I'm in danger. That's not what Jesus wanted. Jesus didn't want us to be a bunch of people who say, I have to do this, I have to do that. He wanted us to be people who want to serve the Lord. People who love God with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength. People who wake up ready and willing to do whatever the Lord has desired of me, whatever the will of the Lord is. That's what I want to do today. That's my joy. That's my pride and joy. That's all that I can think about. We have to be people who have a transformed heart, that are willing to give everything to serve the God who has shown tremendous love to us. Satan's greatest deception is to believe that we can love this world and love God. If we love this world, we will not love God. We will choose ourselves over God. We will not love our neighbor. We will not look for opportunities where we can give of ourselves to those who are less fortunate, those who are in need. We will not put on compassionate hearts. We will put on selfish hearts that want to serve us. Jesus came to die to show us the way of self-sacrifice, the way of a difficult life that's not comfortable and not fun, but that ends in glory. There's coming a day of judgment. Are you ready for that day? Is there anything that we can do to help you with that? If there is anything we can do to help you to be on the right side of that judgment, and you know that there's something you need to do, let us help you today before it's eternally too late. Please come forward as we stand and as we sing.